Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's decision to hold a procedural vote has the potential to throw a wrench in the bipartisan negotiations on infrastructure. For Republicans, one outstanding question is, do they support a plan which has significant popular backing and risk being seen as handing the president a win, or do they dig in, citing the plan's significant costs and inflation concerns? For Democrats, a dwindling legislative calendar and dissatisfaction about the plan's size and scope threatens a party which cannot afford to lose a single vote.
I know both sides are working very hard to turn the bipartisan infrastructure framework into final legislation. We know that. But they've been working on this bipartisan framework for more than a month already. And it's time to begin the debate.
Meanwhile, COVID-19 infections are on the rise across the country. And in Washington, the White House confirmed on Tuesday there have been multiple breakthrough cases among some staffers.
Well, first, let me confirm that yesterday a fully vaccinated White House official tested positive for COVID-19 off campus. In accordance with our rigorous COVID-19 protocols, the official remains off campus as they wait for a confirmatory PCR test. The White House Medical Unit has conducted contact tracing interviews and determined no close contacts among White House principals or staff or the president. The individual has mild symptoms.
At the U.S. Capitol, the attending physician confirms at least one member of Congress and several vaccinated congressional staffers have also tested positive for coronavirus. Legal troubles for another close associate of former President Trump. The former Trump inaugural fund chair, Thomas Barrack, now faces charges for trying to influence foreign policy of the previous administration and lying to the FBI, among other crimes. And just a few days after meeting with the former president, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy names his 5 candidates to serve on the House Select Committee investigating the events of January 6th, 3 of whom voted to overturn the results of the Electoral College. For more on all of this, let's bring in Ed O'Keefe and Meridith McGraw. Ed is CBS News senior White House and political correspondent, and Meridith is a national political correspondent for Politico. Welcome to you both. A lot to talk about today. Ed, let's start with you. Another person in the former president's inner circle was just arrested Tuesday afternoon. Who is Tom Barrack, and what is he accused of?
Tom Barrack is someone who's known the president since the 1980s. They were business partners before they became political partners. Barrack was the chairman of the Trump inaugural committee and raised more than $100 million for that January 2017 party, a record sum, and somebody who, according to this 46-page indictment, was in close contact with not only the Trump campaign, but also the Trump administration about interests of concern to the United Arab Emirates. He is charged in the 7-count indictment, along with a business partner of his from Los Angeles and a UAE national. It details text messages, emails, other conversations that went on between Barrack and UAE officials about concerns they had during the campaign, during the transition, and during the early years of the Trump presidency. It also alleges that he misled FBI investigators back in 2019 when they asked him about this. His lawyer says that he is set to appear in a Los Angeles court at some point this afternoon.
Meantime, Ed, the former president has Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney in his sights. What do we know about his plans to try and oust her?
That's right. He issued a statement earlier today, Elaine, saying that he plans to meet in the coming days at his Bedminster, New Jersey summer golf estate with potential challengers to the Wyoming Congresswoman before deciding who he might endorse. This is consistent with his ongoing decision to engage in certain key congressional races, mostly House and Senate races so far. He's trying to build the case that he remains the titular head of the GOP, and that by endorsing Trump-blessed candidates, they can ultimately prevail in a primary. Whether they can prevail in the general election remains to be seen, depending on the state. He's done this in Alabama in the Senate race. He has basically frozen the field in Georgia's potential Republican Senate primary next year. He has kept other candidates like Arizona's Governor Doug Ducey from thinking about engaging in that state's U.S. Senate race next year. And there are other House candidates he's endorsed across the country, including a handful who are primarying those 10 or so Republicans who voted to impeach him or who were among those that certified the results of the election back on January 6th and 7th. So he remains actively engaged, and this is perhaps the most high-profile example of how he's trying to weigh in by taking on Cheney, who, of course, has been such a fierce critic of his presidency and what he's done since, and, of course, is also on the January 6th commission that's been set up by House Speaker Pelosi.
All right, we'll continue to watch that. Let's turn to the Biden administration. Meridith, what was the focus of the president and vice president's cabinet meeting on Tuesday afternoon?
Well, this was only the second cabinet meeting that President Biden has held since he's been in the White House. And I think one of the notable features of it was that it was actually held in the cabinet room this time. And that's because his first cabinet meeting was held in the East Room to allow for social distancing, as we were still in the thick of COVID. But even though this is months since his first cabinet meeting, COVID still remains a top concern for the president and his administration, especially as this Delta variant and cases of the coronavirus are on the rise. But, you know, he did emphasize that this is something that affects the unvaccinated and, you know, made a push for that. But another big priority for him is, of course, pushing through his infrastructure plan that he hopes to be a signature achievement for him. And he still faces a real uphill battle on Capitol Hill, where, you know, negotiations are ongoing about whether or not they can get the votes to actually make this thing happen.
It was really interesting to see them all in the cabinet room together. And Ed, you asked White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki about the breakthrough coronavirus cases among their own White House staff. Let's go ahead and play part of that exchange.
Confirmed today there's been a breakthrough case.
Yep.
But you're also confirming there have been other breakthrough cases.
Yep.
But you had not previously disclosed that there had been.
And that's correct. We had also committed during the transition that I think there's hundreds, thousands of people who work in the federal government, as you all know, and we had committed during the transition that if it was a commissioned officer, who are the highest level ranking people in the White House and in the in this building here, that we would make that information publicly available. We stand by that commitment.
So, Ed, what do we know about who has tested positive? And given the rise of the Delta variant, might the administration rethink the optics of in-person maskless events?
Yeah, so we know that there was this one staffer that they confirmed today is indeed apparently has apparently tested positive despite being fully vaccinated, and she said that there have been other cases of it. But the commitment that this White House made was to proactively reveal a positive test result if it's a so-called commissioned officer, which in civilian terms and West Wing terms is somebody who's got the rank of at least assistant to the president and above. And there's a few dozen people who match that, about 130 by one count that was put out earlier this summer. That's everyone from the chief of staff to people who work for Psaki in the communications office. Anyone other than that, they're not going to proactively reveal unless we find out about it and ask them to confirm it. And even then, we don't know who exactly it is. Is it somebody who works with the National Park Service here on the grounds? Is it somebody who works in the residence as an usher, or somebody who might work in the White House kitchen? Is it somebody who works over in the Eisenhower Executive Office building behind us here, who's technically part of the Executive Office of the President? They're not at liberty to reveal that, and they don't plan to. So we don't know how many other people who may walk onto the campus here may have tested positive despite being fully vaccinated. As for whether they're going to make any changes to how things run around here, no, the current plan is not to do that. They don't believe they have to. They continue to cite the science, which says, look, if you're fully vaccinated, you don't need to wear masks, you don't need to worry about distancing. Obviously, if you do get sick, stay home, or if you think you have the symptoms, stay home. And they continue to point to the fact that even if somebody is fully vaccinated and tests positive, that the symptoms they've been getting are mild usually, and it doesn't require hospitalization. So we'll see. What was troubling or interesting today was the unwillingness to sort of just come clean about this. When asked, it took a few rounds to finally extract from her today that there had been other cases in the past, and she cited this very technical reason that, well, as long as they're not somebody who's an assistant to the president or above, we don't feel obligated to do so. And I get the medical privacy aspects of it, but this is a place that's been very sensitive to the virus, very sensitive to how reporters on campus are comporting themselves and whether they've been testing positive or fully vaccinated. A survey taken by the White House Correspondents Association showed that more than 95% of us were willing to and had been fully vaccinated, and it helped open up access to the place. So we have proactively reported what's going on amongst our ranks. One would think perhaps for the sake of others who visit the White House and for the sake of their transparency, they might have been a little more forthcoming, but they weren't until we asked about it today.
All right. It sounds like, Ed, perhaps more to come on that. But for now, Meridith, let's turn to infrastructure. The White House is backing Senator Schumer's push for a procedural vote on the bipartisan deal in the face of Republican opposition. How active of a role is the administration playing at this point in the negotiations?
Well, they held a Zoom meeting last night with this bipartisan group. And right now, it's really all about whether or not Schumer can get the votes tomorrow. Right now, it's looking unlikely. He knows that the clock is ticking for him, and he wants to get debate going on this bill, especially as an August recess is looming. But Republicans have made clear they have, two big sticking points. One of them is how exactly they're going to pay for the bill, and two, they still haven't seen the text and a score from the budget office. And right now, behind the scenes, they're trying to make things work. Biden is going to Ohio tomorrow. He's holding a town hall where he's likely to hammer home why he sees this as important. And up on Capitol Hill, Republicans are trying to say, maybe let's move this procedural vote until Monday so that we have time to do a little bit more work. So even though right now it seems like tomorrow's vote that Schumer is pushing for is not looking great in the moment, Republicans and Democrats who've been working on this still say that they're going to forge ahead, but progressives are starting to get frustrated, as are House Democrats. And I think one of the questions that Schumer is going to have is at what point do they just try to press forward and push for their own legislation on infrastructure and leave this bipartisan effort in the dust.
Yeah, I mean, Ed, it's so notable to hear about all of these competing kind of factors. But President Biden, of course, campaigned in part on the argument that bipartisanship was possible, that he, under his leadership, could help bring that back to Washington, given his long career in D.C. Is this moment right now a bit of a reality check for the president?
If it doesn't work out, it will be. But if it does, it proves his point that perhaps he, being president, helped foster this feeling of bipartisanship. We'll see. But he came in knowing, with the slim majorities that exist, that this was possible. That there would, that any little thing could disrupt the ability to get something so big and so high stakes like this through, with real challenges. And so I don't think they're surprised at all to hear that it's taking a little while. There is no firm deadline on this. They appreciate and understand the Senate calendar over here, but the president's attitude throughout has been, as long as they're talking and as long as they engage us over here at the White House, we're happy to allow the conversations to continue and to get it done. There are at least 3 senior staffers here in the West Wing who spend time on the Hill monitoring every ebb and flow of this debate. They keep the president pretty closely updated, and so they're aware of what's going on. And that's why you sort of see him at a bit of a remove, because he knows that potentially putting too much pressure on these Republicans could cause them to back off, but giving them space and encouragement is potentially going to help. But we'll see. I mean, again, if they can't get this done, if they can't get the ball rolling on it at least before the August recess with a signal that they take it up again in the fall, this will have been an incredible waste of time for this White House, when there were members of their party clamoring for them to be bolder, to do this on their own, and to not give bipartisanship a shot. But if it works, boy, oh boy, can he turn around to everybody and say, you thought I couldn't do this, look what we just did.
All right, that is a $64,000 question. Ed O'Keefe and Meridith McGraw, thanks to you.
It's about a
really
$579 billion question, but
that's right. That's exactly right. I stand corrected by the great Ed O'Keefe. Ed and Meridith, thank you both. I really appreciate it.